I'm Joanna Simpson here at Risk Minds International in London. Joining me now is Cathryn Kelly, Head of Credit Strategy Group, MUFG EMEA. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me today. It's lovely to be here.
And if you would just start by telling me, ESG is becoming an increasingly important factor in financial institutions' decision making. What are the main challenges in developing qualitative metrics for climate and ESG risks in borrower assessments?
Thanks very much for the question, and it's quite a broad one. I'd probably answer it in two ways. The first, at the macro level, we've got a lot of mindset change that needs to be made in organisations. Traditional credit risk analysis is over 100 years old in many areas. Climate risk has only been on the agenda for the last 5. So when we're making changes to those strategies and tactics, we really need to focus in on changing people's mindset to focus on climate as part of that. The other is conflicting priorities, where revenue targets versus sustainability targets are often misaligned, and institutions need to look at what they're doing on both aspects in order to move that forwards. If I could just sort of maybe expand on a micro level, there's 6 key areas where we do see challenges that organisations face. Looking at the time horizon, credit risk models 3 to 5 years, climate a longer trajectory. The scenario, we don't know if we're in a transition or a physical risk scenario. It's quite binary. At the moment, if you look out at the world, there's a lot of physical risk that we can perceive, yet there's also those pockets of transition risk coming through. Transparency, we really need to be transparent, have robust, credible assessments, and often climate assessments are subjective. Historical data, most models are built on historical regression, whereas there's no data for climate risk moving forwards. We've got to build that up. Double counting, when we're looking at the assessments of financial institutions, some more developed will have within their cash flow analysis their investments already for the transition change. Other institutions may not. And finally, global standards. I really believe we missed the opportunity 5 years ago for global regulators to align. We're now working in a multi-jurisdiction environment where regulators have different expectations, and that's quite hard for institutions to develop.
So how can banks practically incorporate ESG factors into their internal borrower rating systems?
And it's very challenging, and that's I think the hurdle is quite high. If we move towards considering quantitative factors, it's quite hard to move towards that for the reasons explained. So we're looking at more of the first step in the journey is a qualitative assessment. So looking at potentially you use your model evaluation, and then you look at using your subjective assessments as part of that secondary review of the model output. Typically looking at things like business stability or management and governance factors are ways that we can integrate into the model output to overlay climate change in a qualitative way. Positive things around, say, business stability could be looking at where we've got high entry barriers to competitors, or where there are technological change which needs to drive innovation in order for the entrance. Electric vehicles is a really good example of where the market is very challenging. A lot of Western practitioners have moved forwards their production factories. We've got Chinese imports coming in now, and equally the regulatory environment with the expectations of UK and EU governments have been pushed back by 5 years. So that as an environment is can it be credit positive? Can it be credit negative? We need to look at. Similarly for management or governance aspects, and company, and this very much regional peer comparison works here. If a company has revenue targets, remuneration targets, or linked board aspirations when it comes to climate change, that can be very positive. But equally, if it's not on the agenda, the transition plans aren't credible, then compared to peers, that's more of a negative adjustment on that side.
And how do you envision the future of risk management evolving with the increasing focus on climate change and sustainability?
And it's a fantastic question. And we really are just at the beginning of the journey when it comes to climate change. Just over 5 years ago, Mark Carney's statement from the Bank of England, really got climate change on the agenda, and looking at it as the closure of a journey is not the complete picture. The goalposts are always moving forwards, and it's the fastest growing risk discipline we've ever seen in our industry, rather than AI, which is coming on the agenda, which I'll touch on. As a whole industry, we really need to come together. There's a huge amount of work that has been done when it comes to setting risk appetite, scenario analysis, looking at what we disclose in our financial statements and our engagements with our clients. But as I said, it's not the end of the journey. Every time we move forwards, we're opening a new building block and a new opportunity to develop something further. And I think that's really important for institutions to understand. And as a Japanese institution, we use the framework of Kaizen, where 1% change delivers real value. And every 1% change we do, we can move forwards and add another 1%. And if you look back over a period, you've built up quite a large change process. And I think maybe just to conclude, climate change is a real risk to both us, individually, to the companies that we operate and to the real economy. And I think it's really important that as an institution, we work together with our peers and the regulators in order to move that forwards. We're looking at quite a transition cliff edge in my mind of 2030. The Glasgow Agreement at COP26 in 2021 agreed a number of frameworks which end in 2030, and I believe we're going to see quite a change, and we need to prepare ourselves as an industry for it. And I think one of the concerns that I have as an organisation, we need to move it from the specialists to across the organisation and keep the focus on the agenda. I mentioned AI. It's very much the in vogue topic now, and we need to keep climate on the agenda.
Cathryn Kelly, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you very much, Joanna.